asking these questions. Yeah, that's the right thing to do. If the market is going up, you should go with it. And if it goes down, you should still be open to sticking through it, I guess. That's the best combination. But anyways, I think that's enough gyan for one day. Let's get into it. 704. Let me start from a very quick poll. Okay, how many of you were in yesterday's class? Have you attended yesterday's class? Yes or no? Okay, so most of you guys have, which is like 75%, 25%. I can tell you this is a continuation class, which means easy to get lost. If you know monorepos already, you'll be fine. If not, you will get lost at some point. So feel free to drop off right now, watch the offline video. It shouldn't take more than an hour for us to finish what's left, because we've covered point 1 to point 12. I will still try to, set up the repository one more time, start from scratch. But then, these points are going to be a little hard if you did not attend yesterday's class. With that, I think we can get started. As I said, we'll keep it casual. We'll keep it under an hour, and we'll try to understand some more advanced concepts in monorepos. Specifically, if you look at the topics, what's really left is, given an initial monorepo, how can you add more things to it? How can you add a React project to it? How can you add a Node.js project to it? Monorepo is in the end not just one project but many. And as you bring let's say Next.js, or let's say in the future you get very fancy, you want to bring in Svelte, or a simple React project, or let's say Cloudflare workers. As you bring more and more of these apps in your very big monorepo, you will face some challenges based on what framework you're bringing in. There are standard ways to fix them. A lot of this you'll have to figure out. Let's say if we're not discussing Svelte, tomorrow you try to add Svelte, you'll face some error. Google it, you'll reach the solution. But monorepos mein, as you add more frameworks, sometimes finicky things happen, which is why we want to go through as many of these as we can. Specifically, we'll be going through Next, we already know. We'll be going through React, we'll be going through Node.js. So you can create a simple Express application with React, with Next.js in a single monorepository. Maybe one more thing we can do is Cloudflare workers. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, let's get right into it. I'm going to start, and maybe urge you to start. Let's get right into coding, because yesterday's class was pretty theoretical. Let's be a little more practical today. Create a fresh monorepo in your project. I'm also assuming you already know what a monorepo is, what a turbo repo is, what the folder structure looks like, how packages get connected to each other. If you already know this, create a new turbo repo by running the command npx create-turbo at the rate of latest. This might take a really long time for you. Let me call it week 15.2. Let me select npm workspaces over here. And as I said, this might take a really long time for you, depending on if this is the first time you're downloading it, how good your internet connection is. So if you want, you can also clone this repository from github.com/100xdevs cohort 2 /week 16.1. So you can either clone it from here, I'll paste this in chat, or just run these commands, get a monorepo on your machine. So you can try to, code along if you want, although it's fairly simple stuff. Even if you don't code along, it's fine. You can, always come back to the video. But generally, what we're discussing today is adding more frameworks. That'll be the high level goal. This is something you should learn to Google a bit. So maybe try adding a Node.js application yourself, and then see if there's a challenge that you face. And then try to Google it and try to, reach a point where you're able to fix it yourself. That's the best way to learn. I can totally teach, React today, Node.js today, a bunch of other things. But tomorrow you might be working with a different framework. And when that happens, you'll try to look for another video. You might not find one, which is why Googling always helps. If you have a question, 99% someone else has had the same question. So just Google it. This is taking a long time for me as well. But meanwhile, let me open Visual Studio Code and start to copy the code over here. If you look at these logs over here, they say cache not hit. This is the bug from yesterday in our main website that I'll try to discuss towards the end of the video, but ignore for now. Right, I've opened the repository, but this is taking a long time, so nothing much I can do. We can wait. Oh, I am on a bad internet today, so There's a good chance you guys aren't able to hear me. If that's the case, I do apologize. But yeah, I haven't seen any complaints until now. But yeah, this will take a long time for me because I'm not on the best internet connection. So we can wait. There we go. I think we're pretty close. Make sure you're also able to do it locally. I will not wait very long after this happens because, as you can see, it's taking a very long time for me. All right, looking at Q&A until then. Any questions? Well, beginning of the class the Daily Code website was used making Turbo Repo, made using Turbo Repo. Was getting Corsair in the approach of ExpressPX to integrate API endpoint with React using a proxy. What did that? We did Cors. But maybe if you have a very specific question, put it in a longer Notion doc and post it somewhere so I can look at it. All right, bunch of jokes. When I run the CMS, if you can't see any courses, migrate the database. That's not what you've done. All right, that's what not you've. You get the idea. All right, now that I've cloned this repository or used Turbo Repo to start it or bootstrap it, this is what you should have locally: a top level apps folder, a top level packages folder. I'll give a very high level. We discussed this yesterday. These are two Next.js applications which use these small packages. The most interesting package over here is UI, which has a bunch of your UI components. This is your UI package that both of these guys can use. This is exactly why when you run npm run dev and open this in your browser on two specific ports, local 3001 and 3000 and 3001, two Next.js applications open, which look very similar. And for the same reason, a lot of their code should be shared. And specifically this button that you see here is actually abstracted out into this UI package, which is exactly why monorepos are cool. Given that information, what we have to do next is, start to build this project a little bit more, start to understand how you can add more packages in here. So let's understand that next. The first thing we should try is explore the code base a bit. Maybe go to web/app/page.tsx and try to clean it up. It has a bunch of things here. Maybe just retain the button and remove everything else. Maybe retain the styles as well because buttons use them. And this does not use Tailwind right now. It uses a different way to do styles, but it should be fairly straightforward to understand it. Other than that, clean this file up completely so that you have a very basic clean slate to kick things off from. That's what I'm doing as well. So just a export default function, which simply renders a div, which renders the button component. Hi there. The button component expects some arguments, which is why you see a red squiggly here. It still compiles in dev mode, so you're mostly good. But if you want, you can give this button component a few properties that it expects. For example, app name, and I'm going to call this the web app. This much code is a good starting point for your application. The only new thing that has happened here compared to a simple Next.js application is that this button comes from another repository, another module in your code base. This is your Next.js code base, and this button is coming from this packages folder, which is a separate folder. If you look at it, it's not part of your Next.js application. This UI/source/button.tsx does not exist here. It exists someplace else, and so you're using it like this thanks to monorepos. Given that you have this, can you try to add a new page really quickly? Let's say a /admin page or whatever you want to call it, where again something renders, and the component that renders comes from here, and you have to create a new component here as well. I repeat, you have to define a new component, call it the admin component, maybe admin.tsx. Similar to these, export some random thing from it. Just export a heading that says admin page. Very similar to what's happening in these buttons or cards. Then we'll go from there. Take 30 seconds to write this code yourself, then I'll write it. But yeah, the goal is for you to code a component in your UI library. As time goes by, you will have like 10 different components here as your application grows. 25 more seconds. Project using backend. Please show how to consume. Someone asked, let's create a React and Express project and connect them together. That should be fairly straightforward. We can do that. The camera is a little messed up. Maybe it's mostly the internet. All right, I'm going to start to write some code as well. Export function admin turn dev admin page. This isn't a very reusable component. For example, button is a very reusable component. Card is a very reusable component. You might need cards throughout your application. But just to get an idea of how you can add components here and use them in your main application, we're adding this. Given I have written this admin.tsx, do you remember from yesterday another step that we have to do to actually export this so that this guy can use it? Can anyone tell me in chat? What was the extra step we had to do after this so that the other modules can use it? Package.json, perfect. So you have to go to package.json, and amongst the exports that are present here, you need to add another export. / whatever you want to call it, admin, and wherever that admin.tsx component is. This was a tedious process, wasn't it? Number one, this looks so ugly. If I have 100 components, will I add 100 things here? Number two, I had to make a change in 2 different places. Add a new file and then make another change in package.json. What if I forget? What if a new developer comes and they don't understand, this is how turbo repos are, and you have to make a change here as well. For that exact reason, Turbo repo has something called generators. If you look at the UI component, there's a turbo folder here. We'll eventually understand this, but these generators become super useful in use cases like this. We're not going to go into generators just yet, but if you do read through this code base, which I also very recently did, like before the class, and understood, this is what they do. They'll pretty much let you bootstrap new components, which basically means they add it here as well, and they add it here as well. But we'll get there when we get there. Right now, we've done it manually. What is the next step? Added it here, added it here. I can now use it in my main application. So if I go to apps/web, inside the app folder here, I can add a admin folder, right? That's how you do file-based routing in Next.js. If you're using Next.js, if you have a /admin route over which you want to render something, this is how you do it, right? app/admin/page.tsx. This needs to export a default function which can hi from admin page and then render the admin component. And as you can see, even VS Code gave me an autocomplete, automatically understood that this is going to come from here. If you save this and go to the admin page now, you will see some data over here. This data comes from here. This admin page comes from the fresh component we defined elsewhere. Take a minute, try to do this locally. Then we will try to reuse this component in another application. Let's say the docs Next.js application. Then in the future, we'll introduce a React application here. And then we can use this admin component there as well. That's the beauty of packages, right? You define a component once and you use them across multiple front ends. Why do you need multiple front ends, Kirat? A lot of websites are, not just a single website. Facebook.com has graph.facebook.com, jobs.facebook.com, so on and so forth. They have 10 different websites, 10 different code bases. And you can just have all of them reuse some part of your code base, which in this case is a admin component. If you've done this, I'm going to quickly do a poll right now. But if you've already done this, can you quickly do the same change in docs as well? I'm not going to do it, but can you quickly do the same change in docs? Make sure you run the up and up and you're able to understand what's happening here, but I'm hoping it's straightforward. Let's see. I don't know, actually. We'll have to do a poll. Hmm. 75-25, which was the exact ratio of people who came in yesterday's class versus the ones who did not. So I'm assuming the people who did not come in yesterday's class are facing issues. I will still recap. But again, if you've not done yesterday's class, this will be a little difficult. Let me recap it using the second route, the second code generation path that I was talking about. The UI folder has 2 things, source as well as this turbo folder. I don't know what this turbo folder does. So let's see what is this guy's use case. As time will go by, you will add more and more UI components. Let's say there's a card component, you might add an input box component, you might add a search bar component, you might add a heading component, you might add, a scroll bar component. You have to do all of this one by one. Wouldn't it be nice if you ran a single script that added the file here and updated package.json as well? It would be nice, Kirat. How can you do it? If you look at the script section of UI module, you'll see there's a generate component script which runs turbo gen react dash component. What is this, Harkirat? There is, in the slide somewhere, you'll find a link to code generation in monorepos, or specifically turbo repo. But this basically goes into the turbo folder here and looks at this react component generator. It uses a library called plop that lets you write code, and pretty much does two things. It creates a file and it updates package.json. If you high level understand this as pseudocode, an HBS file is basically a file that you can template, very similar to EJS files if you've seen them. So it just creates a file for you in source/name.tsx and it appends it to package.json. So anytime you have to add a new component, all you have to do is npm run generate component in the right folder, in which in this case is packages/UI. So if you go to packages/UI and run npm run generate component, it'll ask you the name of the component, most probably, because if you go here in the code gen file, as you can see, it said there is a prompt. What is the name of the component? That's the exact thing that was asked to me here. I can say I need a new input box component, let's say. And as you can see, it says changes made. I added an input box. I updated the package.json. So every time you have to add a new component, just use this code generator. Question comes, Harkirat, what if I have to create it in a different folder? I don't know. Maybe this code generator doesn't support that, doesn't support that. You can create your own generator. As you can see, it's not too difficult. Folder name / this thing. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. Not even sure this is very useful. Like you can create two files yourself or like make changes in two places. Either way, something I wanted to introduce because I saw this turbo folder and these are very newly generated. I hadn't seen them before. That's why I did it. And as you can see, it generated an input box component for us, which is a very simple component, which I'm going to completely make empty and return a simple input box from here. Type equal to text, let's say. Maybe a hi there above it as well and a hi there below it as well. Just so a lot of times you can't see input boxes. They're a little hidden. So this will just help us identify them. Now, what can I do? I can go back to admin.tsx and admin/page.tsx and import this input box component. And if I go here, run npm run dev in the terminal, you guys get the idea. Just the same thing I did a while back. Only this time I used code generators rather than creating my own files. And I have a input box here. Do we now understand how you can add more UI components to the UI folder and then use them in your end user applications? Are we good to go? %, again. 72. It's a little early for taking a break. Let me see where we're at. Or are there specific questions? Let's take a small 2-minute break. Q&A, please, guys. Show button.tsx recap /admin not found. Have you created a web/app/admin/page.tsx recap? Where in turbo gen command? Where to write turbo repo gen command? You have to go to packages/UI. And here you have to write npm run generate component. You have to be in the UI folder because this UI folder's package.json has this script. Generators, please summarize. To summarize, okay, a lot of recaps. To summarize, when you initialize a monorepo, specifically a turbo repo, the folder structure will look something like this. You will have your end user applications, which in our case is a docs application and a web application. If you run npm run dev, you can see both of these applications in action on localhost 3000. and localhost 3001. So I have two applications, one running on localhost 3000, one running on localhost 3001. And the code for them exists here in app/docs and app/web. Both of these need to share components which we're writing in UI. All our React components are being written here. The thing to learn is whenever you are adding new components, for example, I added a admin.tsx component here, which as you can see is a very simple component that renders the text admin page. The only thing to learn is that whenever you're adding this, make sure you also add something to package.json, which is this thing right here. You should also add ./admin wherever your admin.tsx component is. If you do these two changes, then you can use this newly created component, this newly created admin component in your Next.js applications. That's how you write reusable code that is being used across two Next.js applications. Do we now understand after the recap? And you can use code generation. You don't have to. You can go back to the video and read through it if you want to. But you can also do it manually. You don't have to use code generation. All right. 90% is great. We will proceed. Let's go to the slides and see what we were supposed to discuss today. Adding a new page was fairly straightforward. This slide pretty much covers that. We've done it. Exploring turbo.json. This is the next not important part, but a very small thing that if you know, you are ahead of 90% of the people, because most people don't even explore this file. They just, understand that, okay, these are end user applications, these are components, they start to write code, which is good. That's how you should learn any new technology. But since this is a class where you're learning this, in a little more depth, we're going to learn about turbo.json. Did I know about this file before yesterday? No. Even I did not ever dive into turbo.json to figure out, how you can extend the turbo repo even more. But since I did it yesterday, it's pretty interesting. You can customize it really well. But you don't have to understand this in case, you're just an app builder and don't worry about monorepo stuff. This contains your configuration for turbo repo. Harkiyat, why does turbo repo need configuration? Turbo repo needs configuration because you need to tell it, okay, bhai, when in the root folder, if you go to the root folder's package.json, you will see these three scripts. It says whenever the user will run npm run build in the root folder, turbo build will run. Whenever the user runs npm run dev in the root folder, turbo dev would run. You need to tell turbo repo, okay, bhai, dev is supposed to do this. What was dev supposed to do? Dev is supposed to go into this docs Next.js application and run npm run dev there. It's supposed to go into this application and run npm run dev there. But how does turbo repo know it needs to do it in these two places and not other places, and what command to run? The answer is turbo.json. Here we have written, okay, bhai, turbo repo, you have three pipelines: build, lint, and dev. Whenever the user runs npm run build in the root folder, I repeat, npm run build in the root folder, which will run turbo build, you have to go to all individual packages and run npm run build over there. That is what tilde build means. It means, okay, bhai, when you build a project, when the global build is called, you have to call npm run build on all the apps as well as packages. Now, a bunch of packages don't have npm run build. For example, if I go to UI does not have a build command, so it ignores them. The ones that do, for example, apps/web/package.json has a build script. Turbo repo will go there and start it. What extra will turbo repo do? If you remember from yesterday's class, we said turbo repo is a build orchestrator. Which means it tells what to build when. So the other thing that turbo repo will do is it will understand that this is the docs Next.js frontend, this is the web Next.js frontend, and given these two, they both of them depend on the UI package. So the build orchestrator turbo will first go here. It will build this. Once this succeeds, it will build these two. Now in our case, this does not have a build script, so this completely gets ignored. But if the UI package did have a build script, then it would first go here, build it, and only then would it start both of them parallelly. The place where you tell it that you need to go into each one of these and run build is the turbo.json file here. That's what this build pipeline does. Lint outputs is also very important, especially when it comes to caching. We'll get here very soon, but let me give you a brief of what happens. If you remember from yesterday's class, towards the end, I did this. I did a npm run build, and this would, what would it do? It would, as you can see, build the Next.js web app, which is this app right here, and build the docs app, which is this app right here. It would run npm run build in both of them. But notice it took a long time. You get a bunch of logs, and eventually it says 2 successful, 0 cached. If I run it again, can you guess what happens? It says 2 successful, 2 total, 2 cached. It happened immediately. TurboRepo understands that if you haven't changed this any file here, it does not need to rebuild it. TurboRepo caches your output, and this is the place where you tell it, okay bro, anything inside this folder, please cache it. If you remember from a while back, someone asked when we were discussing Next.js, or generally, whenever you have a Next.js application, whenever you run npm run build, what happens is a .next folder gets created, where all your final JavaScript files are, your HTTP server is that is serving your front end. So if I go to .next, these are all your final assets for your Next.js application. Here we tell it, bro, please cache these. This though I understand, this though even I don't understand. This probably means, I don't know what this means. We'll Google it eventually. But I hope you understand this part. कि .next के अंदर कुछ भी हो, if there is anything inside the .next folder, please cache it. This also, if you go through the docs really quickly, we can figure it out. Outputs. I'm sure the answer is somewhere here. Couldn't figure out right now. Someone figure out and let me know in chat. In like a minute, I'll open chat. So that's what output does. It tells TurboRepo what to cache, so that if the user runs it again, if I run npm run build again, it knows कि भाई this next folder तो I have, so I will just put that same next folder here. So if I rerun npm run build, it will simply replace this with the cached value. We will have to see how we change this as we move to Express or we move to a React application. But since it only has Next.js applications right now, they have globally written कि भाई output तो यहीं होगा. Output will be here only. But eventually, you know, it needs to be a dist folder for a React application or for a Node.js application. So we'll see how to replace these outputs. Lint is straightforward. Dev is a little weird. Dev mein you don't want any caching. You want, you know, it keeps on hot reloading, and you set persistent to true, which is also something you'll find here. Maybe bhul gaya, kal hi I read why this is needed. Inside dev, we have specified cache false. This means that we're telling TurboRepo not to cache the result of the dev script. Since you shouldn't do that, right? If you're running it in dev mode locally, you want it to restart no matter what. Additionally, we set persistent to true to let TurboRepo know that this is a long running server, yes. So that TurboRepo can ensure that no other tasks depend on it. So yeah, basically since this is a long running process, if you start a Next.js server, if you run npm run dev in a next application, it's a bad idea. You can still do it, but it's a bad idea for someone else to depend on this because this is running itself. Okay, do you ever run the UI folder? No, bhai. UI folder doesn't run. It just exports a few things that get used here. But this docs and web actually run in dev mode. And when that happens, you sort of want to ensure no one else depends on them, which is what this enforces, which probably means if I add, you know, another folder here and make this guy depend on this guy, it'll fail or, you know, give you an error that says, okay, you're not allowed, and nothing is allowed to depend on docs or web. This is the brief of turbo.json. We can read more through this if need be. We have to change this a little bit more as we introduce the Next.js and React application. But I hope you get a high level of the turbo.json file. which you don't usually touch. But if you, for example, in the future add a deploy pipeline, which needs to, deploy all of your applications to AWS and various places, then you would add it, deploy depends on the deploy of everyone. And then you would individually go to this Next.js applications package.json and add a deploy script here, which would whatever, push this to Vercel. And then if it's a React application, then it's supposed to push this to S3, so on and so forth. So do we understand the turbo.json file? As you can see, even I don't understand it in too much depth because you barely touch this file, if at all. But do we understand? 78, 77%. Let me open Q&A really quickly and look at any specific questions that might help here. Next also caches. So it looks like if .next has anything then cache folder, then Turbo won't cache because it has 2 caches. Oh, okay. Okay, so a few people are answering. Okay, what is this other thing over here? If you go to turbo.json, it says cache this and also cache this because it means that don't cache the folder. Okay, this means don't cache. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It means cache this, but don't cache this specific folder because next also caches. So it doesn't have anything that cache. Okay, someone pushed a link. Let's read through this really quickly, but you get the idea. This you should include. This you should not include. Don't include the cache folder inside the .next folder. All right, let's see. There's a few more questions. Repeat. Pipeline. All right. Cool. If you don't understand pipeline, you probably don't understand what Turbo Repo does, which is something we discussed yesterday. Yesterday we discussed, okay, if you have a monorepo, which you can do without Turbo Repo. I repeat, monorepo, Turbo Repo are different things. You can have a monorepo that does not have Turbo Repo. You can have a Turbo Repo which does have monorepos. So if you just have a monorepo, if you're like, bro, I'm not using Turbo Repo, I will just use a Turbo Repo. What are good examples? Yarn Workspaces or Lerna. Then you will have multiple projects inside a single repository, a React project, a Node.js project, and let's say a Next.js project. And when you will run npm run build, you will have a script that looks something like this to build everything together. You'll go to cd react and npm run build and cd / Node.js and npm run build, so on and so forth. You will sequentially build all of them. Or if it gets even more complicated, let's say you have a UI folder which also has a build script, which this guy and this guy depend on, then you will say, bro, I first need to run this and then need to deploy this and then first need to build this, then need to build this, then need to build this. So this script gets really complicated. What is Turbo Repo? Turbo Repo is a build orchestrator. It says, bro, you have a monorepo, cool. Just call turbo build. I will ensure, okay, number 1, I call things parallelly. Number 2, if things are dependent on each other, I first call the child and then the parent. And lastly, I cache the output of the builds. This is what Turbo Repo provides you, so that if you run turbo build, it will understand that, okay, first I need to build this project. Once this builds, then I will build the React project and the Next.js project because both of these depend on this. It will also understand if you run npm run build or turbo build 10 times, it will cache the response the first time, and in all future turbo builds, it will just return you the cached response. So if you don't understand this file, you probably don't understand what Turbo Repo is, or like what is the goal of Turbo Repo. What is the goal? It's a build orchestrator. So basically means it orchestrates, it tells what will build first, what will build next, or what will run this specific script first, what will run it next, so on and so forth. And that's what you define in this repository, in this file, the turbo.json file. So this is the meat of the file where you define all your pipelines. What is a pipeline? it has the things that you run on your project usually. What do you do in a React project usually? You either run it locally by running npm run dev, or you build it locally, which means convert the tsx files into JavaScript files by running this, or you test them locally by running npm run test, or you lint them, which means you make them prettier, add the right spaces everywhere, or you deploy them. These are usually the 5 things that you want to do for all of your projects here. So you can just add a pipeline in Turbo repo that says, okay, bhai, if Turbo build is called, call build on all the packages and apps. If Turbo lint is called, call it on all of these things. If Turbo dev is called, then please don't cache the response and make it persistent. That's what this turbo.json file does. Do we now understand turbo.json and why do you need it? Great. If you now understand turbo.json, which if I'm honestly telling you, you're going to open this maybe once in your lifetime, because this doesn't update very often. You just have one there. If you have some new script that you have to introduce ever, you add it, but usually it remains untouched. Oh, this was a visual thing that I probably should have shown. This means this build script, lint script, and the dev script. Alrighty. Adding React projects. Now comes the easier bit. You can figure this out yourself. Let's try to do this together. If I ask you, bhai, please add a React project, how difficult do you think it is? What do you have to do? You have to introduce a new React project here. You can just go to, what will you do? From first principles, if I ask you, okay, add a React project, let's say you have a new website now that React needs to introduce, or you guys have to introduce, that needs to be in React. An admin website, let's say. What would you do from first principles? You would be like, acha, apps had all the end user applications, so I probably need to go to the apps folder and add a new React project here. So maybe this is what I have to do. npm create vt@latest in the apps folder. Yahan pe there are 2 applications already, 2 Next.js applications. I will introduce a new React application over here. I will call it React app or whatever you want to call it. I will select React as the framework. Harkirat, can I select Vue.js? Yeah, depends on you. Whatever framework you're writing your front end in. If you're writing it in Next.js, then you'll add a Next.js application here. You get the idea. So that's it. You have to introduce more and more packages here. The interesting bit comes as to how can this guy access this UI folder. So first just add the React project, and maybe after you add it, do a global npm install, because you just added a React project which brought in a bunch of dependencies. If you do a global npm install, it goes into all of the packages, figures out what every guy needs and installs them. So you can do it globally. You don't have to go into this folder, React app folder, and run it. You can run it in this root folder as well. I'm going to wait for 20 seconds for people to breathe and catch up. What have I done? In an existing monorepo, I am trying to introduce a new React application and seeing if it works. How difficult is it to add a new React application here? What did I do? Number 1, I ran the npm create vt@latest command to add this React app folder here. And that's it. That's all I did. The other thing I did was I ran npm install in the root folder so that all these dependencies come in the monorepo. Given that you've done both of these things, now try running npm run dev and see how many things start up. If you look at it, now it will give you logs of web, docs, and the React application, which means you have to make no change anywhere. Turbo repo knows that bhai, whenever you are running npm run dev, I need to run the dev script everywhere, which means in the web folder, in the React folder, in the docs folder, which is why all you have to do is add a script here and that's it. You don't have to add, the steps to start it. Turbo repo will automatically start it. If I go to localhost : wherever the React application is hosted, 5173, I see a simple React application. The question is, can I start to use these existing components in it? And the answer, of course, is yes. But what are the steps that you have to follow to do that? So try to import it automatically yourself first. Go to a React component, let's say app.tsx, and try to import a random button from at repo slash UI slash button. It does not give you an error because the package is globally installed. I'll share what that means. But yeah, try to import it and then try to use it and see if it works. Maybe give it an app name. React app. And if I now go to the React application, I see the hi there button. If I click on it, it says hello from the React app because that's the prop that I sent inside. A good question you might ask at this point is, Harkirat, you never added this to package.json. How did it work? If you look at docs/package.json, and we discussed this yesterday, it had at repo/UI as a dependency. I did not add this dependency to my React app package.json. Look at the dependencies here. It does not have this thing. Then how did it work? How did app.tsx not complain? Okay, yaar, I cannot find this repo folder. It's not present in package.json. Can anyone guess? Workspaces, global export, global package.json. No. The answer is it's already present in the global node modules. I think at least that's the answer. If I go back to the root folder and if I go to the node modules here, if I go to the root folder and node modules at repo/UI, it's present here already in the global node modules. Why? Because I introduced this in here and here. Whenever you have a package that is being used by multiple other packages, which in this case is at repo/UI, it comes in the global node modules. TurboRepo tries to bring as many things as it can to the root folder so that you don't individually install them twice. And since it's already present here, React app doesn't complain. It's like, okay, I found the repo UI. Should you ignore this? Should you, miss out on packages, adding packages like these? Whenever you're adding more repos, no. You should always try to stay consistent. And if React app uses something, you should add that to the package.json. The reason we haven't or did not need to add this was because it was already present or it already came in the global node modules thanks to this and this. So if in the future you delete this and this, then this will begin to complain suddenly. It also leads to a bunch of other cyclic dependencies issues, which you have to, eventually, the root of which is you did not have that thing as a dependency. So always make sure if you're using a module from these packages, introduce it in your package.json. We did not have to because we just got lucky because these applications were using them and they were causing this specific dependency to reach the global node modules folder. And that's it. That's how you introduce a React application. Straightforward, nothing too difficult. How are we doing? Monorepos feel like they're like a very complicated concept, and they become complicated at some points when you run into some weird dependency issue. Okay, for some reason you cannot import from another folder, but usually they're like, what you might expect from the name itself. Monorepo, I can import from other places. Does building very fast somehow, yeah. So yeah. If that's the case, if you guys understand this, can you introduce a Node.js application? Here you will face an issue, which again, it's a well-documented issue and there are ways to fix them out there. But before we do that, can you try to introduce now a backend application? Abhi tak we have had a React application, which is pure frontend. Next application, frontend plus backend. Next application, frontend plus backend. Can we introduce a fresh backend application? How would you do it? Add a new folder called backend. And then what are the steps would you follow? Take a minute and try to code it yourself. A TypeScript application, simple Express application, a simple health check endpoint that you can hit on a specific port. That's it. Nothing too complicated. Can you try to introduce it? I will wait for a minute, and then I will proceed. I'll look at Q&A until then though. Can we use Nextauth from authentication in Next and use Express backend for other backend? You can use Nextauth for authentication in Next and use Express backend. So you can use Express backend, but it will get very tricky for you to, do sessions or get the user information in the Express backend. So that you can do it. You can extract the cookie. It won't be as easy for you to do authentication. You'll have to basically extract a few headers. You'll have to make sure your backend application and your Nextauth application share a secret. And if they do share that secret, then this guy can decode the cookie. Basically think of it as, the Nextauth returns a token that the user needs to send whenever they're hitting the backend as well. So yeah, you can do it. It'll be a little twisted to do it though. Few people have the same question. This makes it complex. Too many repos in the same repository. Yeah, that's what you think from first principles. It would have been a good idea for us to have them in separate places, but unfortunately this has become the winner. People like to keep all their code bases in a single repository. I'm able to write everything, not able to code, which is why I'm not writing much today. But this is a simple thing if you've done backend, right? If you've done backend until now, what were the steps that we followed to bootstrap a simple Express application? If you're not able to write even this much by now, then lack of practice is, very, very key indicator. Okay? If you've written 5, 6, 7, 10 Express applications by now, this should be on your fingertips. Either you're using an AI to code, don't do it. The biggest gap that's going to come now is, people are going to use AI to code a lot. So you will never make it muscle memory, which is bad. Okay, 20 more seconds and then I'll call it. I did backend today, just need to manage package.json, how to add shared CN, I'll cover it in a different video. Can you solve an issue in Cal? Oof, that's a big repository to dive into, my friend. Probably give me a leaner monorepo repository. Why do we need to add another backend? Because we already have a backend in Next.js. Great question. This backend might be a WebSocket backend. Next.js does not support WebSocket servers. So if you have to create a real-time WebSocket server, you have to create it in Express or using WebSockets or in a different language. You cannot do it in Next.js, which is why might be one reason for you to introduce another backend. All right, let me now go to apps/backend. What do I need to do? npm init-y. What does this do? Initializes an empty package.json. Harkirat, what should the name be? Should it be at repo/something? If you go to packages/UI, you will notice the name over here is at repo/UI. If you go to any of these front ends though, any of the real applications or backends, you don't necessarily need their name to be at repo/whatever, because they're not being used by anyone else. If you want, you can, and it doesn't matter basically what name you give here, because no one else is depending on it. Even if they're depending on it, while importing they can just write backend. It's not a good idea. It's always good practice to prefix your packages with at repo. But even if you don't do it, it'll still work because you're not pushing it to npm. If you don't understand this part, that's fine. All right. Next step, npx tsc --init to initialize tsconfig.json. Harkirat, do you have to run this command to initialize tsconfig? No, not necessarily. You can always start to write a JSON file yourself. In fact, this will work as well. But this actually may or may not work. We might have to change this a little bit for us to make it work in a monorepo. But do you remember this packages/TypeScript config folder? And if you remember from yesterday, I shared that you probably want to push all your TS configs here. If you look at them, it has a base.json, which basically means a base TS config that everyone might want to use, and then a Next.js specific TS config, and then a React specific TS config. If you go to apps/docs/tsconfig.json, you will notice it extends the at repo/TypeScript config/Next.js.json. So ideally, you want to push all the shareable things of a TS config to this packages/TypeScript config folder. And this base is probably something that, everyone should extend. You shouldn't be writing full as tsconfig files, because a lot of this is repeated already in base.json. So the way I would figure out, so how do you figure out then, Harkirat, what should be in this tsconfig.json? You said I have to extend something. How do I know what to extend? And which specific one to extend? From first principles, it seems like the thing that I need to extend is this base config. So chalo, I will write this much: at repo / TypeScript config / base.json. But how do I know what all to override on top of it? Because if you looked at the Next.js repo, tsconfig, you'll see a bunch of things are overridden as well. How do I know what to overwrite here? Great question. And the answer is you go to turbo repo, go to examples, and see an example for that specific framework. In our case, we need a React application, we need a Node.js application. There are a bunch of examples here. This kitchen sink example has a Node.js backend and a React frontend. So here, if you go to apps/API, you'll find a package.json, not package.json, tsconfig.json, which if you look at it, extends the base repository, updates the module level of the library, changes the out directory to dist. Maybe I will also change the root directory to source over here, and adds a bunch of includes and excludes. If I copy this over and paste it here, this is as long as this is correct, which in this case is correct, this is the tsconfig that you can create. Harkirat, can I write it from scratch? You can write it from scratch. In fact, if you remember the React project, we did not touch the tsconfig. The React app, if you open the tsconfig here, does not extend anything. Should it? Probably. Should probably extend the React tsconfig that's written here, the react-library.json. So I would probably, add and extend at repos. You get the idea. So yeah, try to push all of it, as much of it as you can, into this TypeScript config. Do you have to? No. Again, these are things that don't change on a day-to-day basis too much. As long as your initial application is bootstrapped and works, you're pretty much good to go, because most of the changes that you're making is in the application logic. Do we understand this tsconfig mumbo jumbo that I did? I think I talked a lot for the last few minutes. So let me take a break here. I created the backend folder. I initialized the package.json. I created a tsconfig, which I copied from the kitchen sink example, so that I have the right set of configuration for a Node.js application. Are we good to go? Do we understand this? I think it's time for a break as well. 80%. Okay. Anyways, time for a break. Let's take a small break. 15 minutes, 14 minutes. We'll meet back at 8:10, and we will wrap up the Node.js application, even though there's not much left now. It's just, creating the source file, adding Express, so on and so forth. I can also do it, and then people can drop off if need be, because the only thing that's left after this is adding a common module, basically adding another module here in packages, which, you can eventually cover in the offline video. So let me quickly finish apps/backend, which is going to be as simple as adding an index.ts file here, and then, import. Never mind. Let's do it later. I think it's time for a break. So meet you guys back at 8:10. Q&A is open. I'm looking at Q&A. The web folder is the one which is deployed. What is the purpose of the docs folder? A lot of websites, for example, Postman has a postman.com. It has a docs.postman.com where all their documentation is. These are separate websites maintained separately. That's why docs is also deployed. It is deployed on a separate subdomain where users can look at your documentation. So the goal for this website is to create a documentation website. Goal of this one is your landing page or your main website. Although we added React Next app folder, I don't see any node modules in respective folders like web or React. So are those dependencies added to the global node module at the root? If yes, then we add one dependency which can be used by all other apps, including Express. That is correct. You can actually force React needs to be only here by updating the package.json. I totally forgot what that keyword was, but you can add some attribute here to enforce React will only, or Express will only come in this backend folder's node module. But yes, by default they'll all go to the root folder. Shouldn't you add a port in package.json React application? I added 2 React applications and the second one did not work. That is correct. In fact, if you go to docs/package.json, you will see they enforce a different port, 3001. So yes, they don't do it for the first one. So for the first app, React app, you don't. If you have another React app, you can just update the read script here. I think it accepts port as an argument. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. Oh no, this is React app. Yeah, it started it on 302. So yeah, you can add the port on your second React application. Please use Slido. Free alternate for doubts. Okay, let me look at that. Repeat how do you figured out extends part again. Yes. So if you go to turbo.json, turbo repo's default page, if you go to get started, it has start from an example. Here it says, okay, bhai, do you want a Next.js application, SvelteKit application, a design system which probably has storybooks and a bunch of other things. Gatsby is a framework you might have heard of, another front-end framework. Kitchen sink, which has everything, front-end, back-end, thankfully, luckily, the React is front-end is in React. If you look at this blog, front-end that they've written, if you look at the API app that they've written, it's a simple Express application in Node.js. So here, I found the tsconfig and copied it over. There are a bunch of other things here. tsup.config.ts. We'll very soon come to what this is and why you need it. But yeah, this is where I got the tsconfig from. Links of the tsconfig kitchen sink example. It is right here. Going to paste it in chat. Recap generators. Generators, as the name suggests, let you generate code. What would happen if you are a new UI engineer in a team and you're tasked with creating a fresh component called accordions, if you've heard of accordions, something simpler, radio box or checkbox. What can you do? You can either write all of this yourself, you can bootstrap the checkbox.tsx file, or you can use generators, which the code for the generator is here. You don't have to look at it. The thing that you have to do is auto generate a basic component here. So for that, you can go to packages/UI and run npm run generate :component. When you run this, it runs turbo gen react component. What does this do? This goes into the turbo folder and figures out, okay, bhai, is there a React component generator here? It'll go here and find like, acha, there is a React component generator. What is it supposed to do? It is supposed to take a prompt for the user. The prompt is, what is the name of the component? The component in our case is input box 2, let's say. Then it automatically generates an input box 2 component for me, which I can of course edit and add more things in here. It also adds it to package.json, as you can see right here. As you can see, it's already broken. There's a bug here. The spacing isn't correct when it adds it. So if you are incredibly enthusiastic, you should fix this. Somewhere in turbo repo exists a bug, specifically in generators. Whenever maybe not actually, this is not a bug. It's just that, if you go to the generator, it's been written incorrectly. If I go to config.ts, somewhere here is where you should, add more spaces, or the generator itself is, this code is basically wrong. It should have, some sort of extra spacing here at the beginning. But again, that's not a fix because some people have 2 spaces, some people have 5 spaces, so you can't figure that out. But you get the idea. It does both of these things, so that you don't have to do it. That is what code generation lets you do. Please add Tailwind to this project. Oof, sure. Not if you get the time today, sure. If not, I will add it eventually. Felt easy and not that hard. Sounds good. Mixed responses I got yesterday, but okay. Recap backend and the TypeScript file. I don't understand the TypeScript file, but the backend, first create a new folder, call it backend 2, let's say. Go to the backend 2 folder. Run npm init -y to initialize a package.json. Initialize a tsconfig.json. and extend this from at repo slash whatever is this, TypeScript config slash base.json, and then add whatever you want to override on top, which let's say in our case is, okay, I want the out dir to be dist, I want the root dir to be source. And if you want, there are a bunch of other options. If you don't, that's fine as well. But at some point, if TypeScript, begins to complain, you might have to update the version of ECMAScript that you're using to generate the final JavaScript. What was the GSOC form about? Oh, it's for if you have a proposal, you can put it there so we can review the proposal and tell you if you can change something. Brief about CI/CD. So the name suggests CI/CD, which means continuous integration, continuous deployment. Basically means a way for you to continuously deploy code from GitHub. If you go to any good GitHub code base, which this one isn't because it does not have an action right now. Oh, it does now. Let's see. What does this guy do? Oh, there are a bunch of linting actions. So there is CD in this repository. It lets you lint check a bunch of code bases. There's no, CI in the, there's a CI in this specific project, continuous integration. It makes sure your tests are running. You don't have tests, but you get the idea. Lints are fine. The code is written correctly. It does not have continuous deployment. This code does not automatically deploy over to AWS, which is where this website is hosted. But when you do add all of that code, which you usually have to add, not usually, you have to add it here in this .github/workflows, which let's look at this one. What does this one say? It says anytime a pull request is created on any branch, make sure after you check out the repository, run npm install, run npm run lint check, and if it fails, this action fails. If this action fails, again, as the maintainer in the pull request, just see ki acha, this specific user, if I approve and run this specific user's code is correct. This is continuous integration. We have made sure the code that's coming in is linted correctly. What is continuous deployment? Usually happens after you merge your code base and the thing gets deployed over to AWS or wherever. We don't have it yet, which is why you don't see it. But that's a high level of CI and CD. Willing to start a new business, go with Cloudflare for price. The price is cheap. Vercel will become expensive very quickly. Okay, we have 4 more minutes. Can we keep a turbo repo for Python backend? No, you cannot. Turbo repo is a JavaScript framework, not a Python framework. Can we, instead of creating Discord polls for pending offline videos, please cover them sequentially? For example, yeah, that is right. Makes sense. I will cover next. If possible, give a TS config in JSON. If you don't understand TS config, this root TS config that you get by the default npx tsc -" init is also fine. You might have to update the lib to be ES 2015, else it might, I don't know, it might break for you because I've seen it break in the past. If you use the TSC compiler, we'll not use the TSC compiler. Never mind. We'll get there very soon after we start the class. So if you don't understand it, you can have the default file that you get when you run npx tsc -" init and just update, source dir and out dir. Generally, what should you do? You should reuse all of these configurations as much as possible, which is why they've given you a base TS config that you can extend and then, add more options on top. Harkira, what is this base TS config? Even I don't understand all of these. I don't think anyone does. But this, if you remember, we discussed this in the npm deploy video. It creates your declarations. Target is what is the final target of the JavaScript version of the JavaScript ECMAScript of the final JavaScript file. When you convert from TypeScript to JavaScript, what is the version of the final JavaScript file? Is it ECMAScript 2022, 2021, 2020, so on and so forth? Strict is for, how strict you want the TypeScript checks to be. If you make this false, a lot of type errors will be ignored. If you make it true, they won't be, so on and so forth. I don't think anyone understands all of these. Probably the maintainers do, like the people who wrote this. But you get the idea. All right. Cool. We are at 8:08. What do you mean by extends? Oh, it basically means, extends. This means all of this will get copied and pasted here. Plus, whatever you have written extra will get overridden. So if I wrote out dir, it will overwrite or, add out dir over here. So that's what extends mean. It means bring everything from there here. Pretty common term in computer science. You're extending a different file. All right, I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. Cool, we're at 8:08. Let me start from the top this backend part and quickly finish it. Basically show you how you can create an Express application, and then we'll go from there. Once we've done that, there's just one more thing left, and then I'll take doubts. I think we'll have enough time for doubts. Let's quickly finish this specific backend part and one more part. As I said, let me delete everything from these two backend folders. Step number one, whenever you want to introduce in your backend in your monorepo, is just create the backend repository or the backend package. Then go to the backend package. And run npm init-y to initialize a package.json. Then create a tsconfig.json and copy over all of these here, so that you extend from the base repository. Maybe in my case, I will also add the root dir to be source. Then start to add your code base. Number one, create a source folder, because I've told TypeScript, okay, this is where I'll keep all of my code. Why is this complaining? I do see a bunch of red squigglies. I don't know if it's just VS Code acting up or something else, but we'll see. Source may add index.ts and then npm install express at type/express to bring express to your code base. Import express from express. We've done this many times. Const app equal to express, and then app.get whatever slash. I'm hoping this code is like fairly straightforward, and you've written this many times now. Hopefully, I don't know. Hello world. That's all that I had to do to initialize a basic Express application. What's the next step? I need to add the build script and the dev script. After I've initialized a basic Express application, which you haven't right now, it's fine. You can create like a simple Java TypeScript file that does a console.log hi. Doesn't have to be an Express application. Given that you bootstrap this index.ts, the next thing that you usually do in a turbo repo is add your build scripts and dev scripts and lint scripts to package.json. In my case, build over here does what? It needs to compile the TypeScript code into JavaScript code. And dev should do what? Ideally, you should use something like nodemon over here. But in my case, it can just do compile the code and then npm node dist/index.js. The dev script looks right. It will start my backend server. The build script looks like it will compile my backend server. Given these two already, now if I globally run npm run build, or even in this folder, the backend folder, run npm run build, let's see what happens. What is giving? There was an error in a file. Let's see. tsconfig module common.js. The module must be set to node next. Oh, did I import from? No, I did not. The module must be set to node next when the option module resolution is set to node next. Where is module resolution set to node next though? TypeScript config /base.json. Did I overwrite this? No. This looks wrong. It should probably not be node next. Kitchen sink. Sorry guys, live debugging. 1 second. Config TypeScript base.json. Did I update this file by any chance? The base file. If you guys go to base.json, do you see node next in your machines? You probably don't. I might have copied over the wrong thing. Can you quickly tell me, someone in chat, do you guys see something? Do you see node next here? Yes or no in your base.json? You guys do? All right. Huh. Interesting. Then we can, I don't think that's right, but let's see. Module resolution is set to node next. module should be set to node next. So if I go here and set module to node next, still complains. Module must be set to node next when the option is. Okay, let's try that one more time. Did work. Interesting. We'll come to why that fixed it. Maybe. But what did it suggest to me? It said option module must be set to node next when the option module resolution is set to node next. If I went to base.json, here it said module resolution equal to node next, and I just took the suggestion that it gave me. But if you look at the kitchen sink example, their base does not have module as node next, it has it as yes next. Let's see if this works though. Node /index.js does seem to work. Okay. I shall see a red squiggly here, but I think that's just VS Code acting up. Let's try that one more time. tsconfig. The module should be set to node next. किया तो था ये. Close. Reopen node next. Module must be set to node next when the. This is almost 100% VS Code acting up. Either way. I forgot to add a app.listen. Let me quickly add that. Boy, this became like a very chaotic class. Let's take a breather after this. Let me just quickly add a app.listen. Let me delete the dist folder, npm run build, node /index.js, and if I go to localhost :3000, I see message hello world. Although a lot of things happened here, so let's take a breather and let's understand how are we doing. Poll/quiz. How many of the people were able to understand what happened, or are you good to go? No, probably not, is what I would guess, but we'll see. Yeah, 50%. What do you want? A recap? A recap it is. Let's do a recap one more time. Let's understand how would you add a backend application to a turbo repo. Step number 1, delete the backend code that I added. Step number 2, add a backend folder here. Step number 3, go into that backend folder and initialize an empty package.json. Step number 4, add a tsconfig.json file which you can extend from at repo /typescript -config /base.json. Compiler options root dir source out dir ./list. Let's just keep it this much. Let's not add any overrides on top of base.json, and let's introduce a source folder with an index.ts file inside which you will write your code. I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm just going to add a console.log hi there. Won't introduce an Express application just yet. And let's see if this works. tsc-b seems to compile. Node /index.js seems to work. Did we now understood a quick speed ramp of how quickly I was able to add? The tsconfig is much simpler. Just added a backend folder and just overrode the base.json configuration. Was this easy enough? I'm assuming this was, but let's see. It's making it difficult here. 83%. We'll take doubts at the end. But if this was easy enough, what else is left? Npm install express at types/express, and then just adding your express code over here, which is as simple as import express from express const app equal to express, and then you guys get the idea. This is straightforward. I mean, I don't know, for the people who've done Express. And then a app.listen at the end, which listens on a specific port. If I run tsc-b, it should compile it. If I run node /index.js, it runs it on localhost :3000. This is how you add an Express application. Harkirat, how do I make this Express application import another package from here? We'll probably get to that after the doubts, or maybe tomorrow, basically in the offline video, the last slide basically, because I think this class became a little too jarring at some points. Let me take a poll and we can go from there. Should we do doubts right now, yes or no? And if the answer is no, then we'll continue. There's just one slide left. But should we do doubts right now, yes or no? Okay, not a tough competition, so okay, the answer is mostly no. Cool, then let's finish it up. Let's do the next difficult thing, which is, given you have the backend folder, how can you import something from here? Okay, hold on, I think I asked the wrong question. Sorry guys, one more time. Should I take doubts, yes or no? No. Cool, so no. In that case, the next thing that we have to do is introduce a package here that backend can import. Can backend import UI? No, it does not need any of these components, right? There's no point of backend importing a React component. I mean, there is a point if you're doing server-side rendering, but okay, let's not get there. Let's not go there. Backend does not need to import any of the UI components. So let's import a new, or create a new package called common. If you have gone through which class is that? The Medium class, you might remember the purpose of this Medium. By Medium, I mean the blogging website class. You might understand the purpose of this common module. Inside here, we will write some code that can be used by the React application, the web application, the docs application, and the backend application. So inside common, this is going to be simple Node.js code, or JavaScript code. We will not include any React specific libraries here. So now go to the common folder. So packages/common, npm init-y, introduce a package.json here, npm I express, maybe not express, maybe Zod. If you guys remember, common is usually used to store the Zod types, because the Zod types need to be shared between the backend and the front end. If not, that's fine as well. We can keep it simple and just add a simple index.ts file here. So common/source/index.ts is going to export a value that is, in my case, my name, in your case could be something else. Eventually, what should this be? It should be a export const some user type equal to z dot object, the Zod type, right? Or a lot of times the thing that is stored here is the export const backend underscore URL equal to api.google.com, let's say, or whatever. This backend URL might be needed by backend also, frontend also. So you put it out in a separate package called common. You don't put it out in UI. This guy's goal is, okay, I will be shared across all of them, irrespective of whether it's a backend repository or a front-end repository, which is why you generally avoid putting React components here. Given that I've exported these two things from here, the question is, how do I import them here? Step number 1, commons, where you have to introduce a TS config to kick things off. So let's introduce a TS config in this common folder. You can just add one like this, or use npx tscn, it does not matter. In this case also, it's a fairly simple application, which is why you can just extend the base TS config. So at repo/fig/ you might not need this as well. Let's see, I'm adding it, but you might not need this. Source, compiler options. Rootdir /source outdir /this. A very simple tsconfig.json inside the common module. Some exports here. What's the next step? Next step is giving it a name that's consistent with our namespacing. You can leave it as common, as I said, and you can import it in other places as well, but rather keep it, as at repo/common, so that in case you ever have to push and publish this to npm, this repo is your username. So don't have it as a repo, have it as your own username. Right now does not matter. So at repo/common, we introduced this new package over here, which, what are we missing here? The exports. What does this need to export? Let's say a dot slash, I don't know, config, which is dot slash source slash index.ts. That's it. The reason I think you don't need a TS config is because it just exports something that gets, the TypeScript file directly gets imported here, which is why, you don't have to worry about the TS config because nothing compiles over here. It does not even have a build script, right? If you go to package.json, does not have a build script over here. Even if you go to the package.json of UI, it does not have a build script. It does have a TS config though, so maybe you want to keep it. But okay. Either way, let's go to common slash source slash index.ts. It exports these two things. Let's try to import them in the other places. What's the first step you have to? Let me complete it and then I'll take doubts. After you've exported everything in the common module, what did I do? Added a common folder, added a package.json, renamed this, added the export, and then gave the dot slash config, pointed it to the source slash index.ts file that I've introduced over here. Now I want to import this in backend, let's say. Number one, whenever you add a new package, you should run a global npm install. If you don't do this, then it will basically not be able to bring this specific package common over to the root node modules, wherever they are, right here, which is something you need if you want to use them in packages slash common or packages slash wherever. In common, we want to use it. So in common slash package.json, let me introduce amongst the many dependencies. Oh, there are no dependencies here. So let's add a dependencies array here with at repo slash common, pointing to what? Pointing to star. It means find it here in the mono repo. It's part of the npm workspaces. That's what star means, right? I hope you understand that by now. After you've added this dependency, you have to rerun npm install because you need to, this will actually bring the repo to node modules. So if I now go to node modules slash at repo, I will see common is present here, which points to the common folder. As you can see, there's an arrow here. So this is a symlink to this common folder over here. And now if I try to import something from, let's say, here is where we might face some issues. Let's see. If I go to apps slash backend slash source slash index.ts and try to import, let's say, backend underscore URL from at repo slash common slash config. Oh, I don't face any issues. That sounds pretty. I mean, I'm hopeful. Let's see. Let's log this backend URL. And then let's go back to apps slash backend npm or whatever tsc-b and node this slash index.js, and it throws an error. Oh, my bad. Index.js. There you go. It says unexpected token export. This is where you might want to add the common JS output or whatever was the output in the root TS config in the kitchen sink example. So let's go back to the kitchen sink example. That's why I was saying, there might be something we need to add eventually as we import things from other modules. So let's quickly add that, let's see if it works, and then I'll take doubts. I know I'm moving a little bit fast here, but happy to recap it basically. So if you did not understand this time, we'll do it again. Getting started, examples, kitchen sink, apps, API, TS config, copy this from here, paste it over here, and let's try it. This will probably break with the error that we saw initially. Let's replace this with node next. Let's try that one more time. Let's delete the dist folder. Let's try that one more time. Node this slash index.js. It still gives you the same. Oh no, sorry, never not done it. Still gives you the same error. It says cannot unexpected token export. This is something you'll commonly see when you're using the TypeScript compiler. Let me quickly. Okay, so this is the. Okay, few things have happened. Let me share everything. And go to Accelerator here. This is our apps folder. This had a React project. This had a next project. We introduced a backend Node.js project. We also had packages which had UI. And what did we introduce here? We introduced common. We now want Node.js application to use common. But when you do this, TypeScript gives you an error, which I'm sure is fixable if you try to update the TS config here. But one thing that usually I've also done, and I've seen these guys do as well, is not use TSC. I repeat, not use TypeScript compiler, but use a different compiler. If you look at them, here it says TS up, that is one compiler you can use, or there is one called ES build, which lets you again compile TypeScript and even frontends into JavaScript. You can try either. I'm going to maybe start off with ES build. Node.js build. What is this ES build, Harkirat? What is this TS up? They're also TypeScript compilers. They let you compile TypeScript code to JavaScript code almost every time that you introduce a Node.js application which tries to import a different repository. And if someone can tell me the root cause of this, I'm happy to do a $100 bounty, because I've been stuck this for a while. This is I first saw this at Backpack, and then after banging my head a lot, I moved the Backpack code base to ES build and not use TSC. And then the last code also we did the same thing. Today also the same thing is happening. Okay, the TypeScript compiler tends to give this specific error, and I've spent countless hours trying to fix it. Which is why I eventually resorted to ES build, and even their example uses TS up. I don't know why. Maybe probably the same reason. So you can use either. I'm going to use ES build, which the way to install ES build is npm install ES build. What is ES build, Harkirat? Just another TypeScript compiler. And the way to bundle it for Node, or whatever, create a Node.js JavaScript files given TypeScript files, is run ES build your source application, which in our case is /source/index.ts -- bundle -- platform equal to Node. Let me run npx here. Give me a very long file. How do I output it to index.js? Out file dist/index.js equal to dist/index.js. All right. This is the final command I ran. I know you don't have it, so let me paste it in chat. This command converts your TypeScript code into JavaScript, and if you run it now, hopefully, I'm keeping my fingers crossed here, node dist/index.js, it does work, and it does say api.google.com. This is something I've banged my head on for a long time. So this is a $100 bounty. If someone can tell me why TSC, if you use the TypeScript compiler to create the final JavaScript file, and if your JavaScript file has imported a different module, you get this export error. It's definitely related to one of these keys, not these. The target, most probably the target. I think this needs to be something else. Purely comes from all the debugging I did in the past, but that's a high level. If I use ES build to run it or compile it and run it, then it works also, and it logs the URL that comes from where? That comes from this backend URL comes from another package that we had just introduced. Can you use TS up? You can use TS up as well. If you use this TS up to compile the project, it will still work. We can try it if need be. When you use this, you have to create a tsup.config.ts file. Almost 99% sure this will work. Can quickly try that as well. tsup.config.ts. Let's see if anyone already knows. Let me just finish this. If I run ts up now, npx ts up, that will also let me compile my backend code. This is what I meant when I said, you don't worry about Turbo Repo for a long time until one day you see this, weird dependency error, and then, and then nothing is working. Need to install TypeScript. Probably need to install it globally. Okay, npm install tsup, and then source package.json. Add a build script that does tsup. Npm run build, and there you go. Now I have used tsup to compile my TypeScript code into JavaScript code. If I run node dist/index.js, you will pretty much see the same output. Do we understand how when you're in a backend code, the TSC compiler will work fine until you introduce an import from a different library or different package, and then it will begin to shit bricks. And then one of the ways to fix it is to not use TSC, but I'm curious to see if someone can figure out what the issue is. With that, let me do a quick poll on where we are at, and then we'll recap and do a bunch of other things. It's 8:34, so we have a lot of time. Pretty good, better than I was hoping for. 74% is saying good, and 27% is like okay. So tell me what should we do next? For all practical purposes, class is complete. The last slide was pretty much introducing your own module, which we have. So I'll just take a few doubts, and maybe I think the doubts are mostly around it's not working on my machine. So happy to answer any specific questions you might have. But yeah, that was the last slide. So I think officially we are done. But I would still spend some time trying to introduce the React project, import, add Zod to the common project, use it in other places, like in the React and the frontend project, so on and so forth. All right. Recap last 2 slides. Yes, I think that's a good thing to do. We should recap. Number 1, how to add a Node.js application. Number 2, how to add a common module. Let's start with this one. This is the easy bit, right? Adding a common module that both your apps, which are front-end apps and back-end apps, can use. What is the first thing I did? I deleted my common package right now. First thing I did was added a new common package. Ke bhai, theek hai, all the common code that all of these will share, I'll put here. Harkeet, why not use UI? UI has all the front-end code. Let's not make back-end import from UI. That just sounds counterintuitive. Let's add a new module, inside which the first thing you have to do is introduce a package.json, packages/common, npm init-y. What did this do? Introduced an empty package.json. Step number 2, change its name. You have a convention throughout your packages that they start with @repo. So maybe do the same thing here, so that you follow the convention across all your packages. Step 3, add a tsconfig.json, which can simply extend the @repo/typescript-config/base.json, which is this base.json right here. Doesn't even need anything else, because we never really compile this code. So root dir and out dir don't matter here really, because this package never gets compiled to JavaScript. It just gets used by all of these. And the final compilation happens here. Next up, I added the code that I want to export. So source/ let's say index.ts, where I export const URL or backend URL equal to api.google.com. Let's say this is this backend URL that all frontends also need to know, and the backend also needs to talk to it for some reason. So that's why I've written it in a common place here. Else I would have had to write it in 4 different places. That is the benefit of using abstractions and abstracting it out into this common module. The next step is, how can I use it in any one of these? For that, number 1, you have to go to the package.json of that specific module and add that as a dependency. So if I go to backend/package.json, if I go to dependencies, why was it not here and it was still working? @repo, maybe I added it in a different place, but @repo/common:*. This is the dependency I need to add. And then my backend code can, use this effectively. But until now we have to recap the 17th slide as well. This one as well. So let me delete this backend folder for now. I have no backend folder. I have only added a common module, which is simple. Package.json, tsconfig, which simply extends the base config, source/index.ts. What did I miss? I missed the exports. So exports config, or whatever you want to name it, ./source/index.ts. Harkirat, you did not add root dir over here. Doesn't matter. We're never compiling the code. This tsconfig never gets used, which is why I was a little curious why they have a tsconfig here, because it's probably not going to be used, because this code never compiles here. It compiles in the parent, whoever is importing it. We have extended this tsconfig. We have added the export. Now we just use it in a fresh new backend module. Number 1, introduce a backend module. we have the package that needs to be shared everywhere. We need to introduce a backend module where we will use it. If I go to app/backend, npm init-y to introduce package.json, npx tsc --init to introduce tsconfig.json. Remove this, just extend it from where? Extends from our standard and copy it from this one. Extend from here and then overwrite some options, specifically the rootdir, source, outdir, dist. Do I need to do this? You don't even need to do this. Your TypeScript compiler, we're not using the TypeScript compiler, so you can also sort of ignore this. These two, but okay, we'll keep it. And the one more thing I want to copy that we might need is the lib es, maybe both of these. I don't think we need these two, but I'll keep them for kicks. Where am I copying this from? I'm copying this from the kitchen sink example on Vercel Turbo repo. Still gives me a red squiggly, but I think that's just VS Code. This needs to be node next purely based on the error that it gave us. This is how I was able to set up the tsconfig.json. Then I added whatever code I wanted to add in source/index.ts. I know there are a few points to do here. Unless you do them, you won't understand. But let me just recap and put them together. Here I imported backend underscore URL from at repo /common/config. And then let's say I just log it for now. I don't do anything else. Backend. I don't create an Express server. Of course you can, but I haven't created an Express server. Simple application imports and logs. Now if I do npm run, you can use esbuild, which is what I'm using over here. You can copy this and push it to package.json as well. If you want to create a build script, you probably want to do that. So just paste the esbuild script over here, which is, what does it say? Esbuild. This is your root, the first entry level TypeScript file. Bundle it for the node platform, and this is where you store your output file. If I run npm run build, it gives me an error because exports is incorrect. Config, the parse config is not exported by this thing. Oh, sorry about that. /config. And now if I run node dist/index.js, it logs something that is defined where in this common module. This api.google.com gets logged where in the backend module here. This is all the bootstrapping you need to understand. If you understand this, after this you have to write a lot of application logic. Of course, that logic changes based on where you have to write it. A lot of that logic you write here. A lot of that logic you write here in common/index.ts, whatever needs to be shared. For example, all the Zod logic will reside here. But I'll take a pause here and do another poll to see how are we doing now. Do we understand how to introduce a backend project and how to introduce a new module, a package that can be used by both backend and front? All right, good to go. Pretty good. Cool. So that's 89%. 89% is great. You should practice this before the next class. The next class is going to be an end-to-end project. So I'll try my best. Not try my best. So next week we need to add Nextauth, a video on Nextauth. Nextauth is the only thing that's left before you can, create a monorepo-fied Prisma application with Tailwind that uses a Next.js front end, maybe has an Express backend, so on and so forth. So a few important action items for me are: number one, Nextauth video; number two, CI/CD, which is something we're supposed to cover this week, but we can cover it eventually. And yeah, I would urge you to go through all of these hurdles yourself one time to bootstrap an application which has everything, so that before the next class you're a little more comfortable with it. With that, I'm going to open chat. Oh, looks like a lot of people found the answer to TSC. I'm assuming that's what that is. Packet, try turbo repo cache and try TSC. Try clearing the turbo repo cache. I don't think that fixes it, but do you mean this? Oh, sorry, let me share my screen. Let's delete the turbo repo cache. So you mean, and these better not be Googled answers because I have Googled this many times, sir. And if you found the solution, try to run it locally, make sure it works. cd node modules /at .cache/turbo you're saying delete all of these, and then cd app backend tsc-b does compile node disk/index.js, doesn't run. So that did not solve it. Let's see if someone else has suggested something. This example is working with TSC. I just not use TSC script inside common/package.json. This example is working with TSC. So let's open apps. Let's open backend. Let's open source. Let's open index.ts. You are importing it. So let's try that out. What did you do? I just not used any script inside common/package.json. So inside common/package.json, you did not include any script. Okay, let me remove the script. Did not fix it for me at least, but you said it's working for you, so let's see if it works for me. It might just be a node version issue. The node version that I have is not working on that, it works on a different version, but let's try your other code. cd.git clone cd turbo npm install. The issue with TSC is because of backend packaging lacks type module. This is something I've tried, sir. This gives me deja vu, but let's try this. I know it works with TS node. You said add it as a dev dependency. So let's try the first thing you mentioned. You said go to backend/package.json, backend/package.json, and add type module. This 100% gives me a deja vu because this is a fix that I've tried. And let's see if that fixes it. I think this starts a new issue, but I could be wrong. Let's see. If I go back, if I open a new terminal, cd apps/backend tsc-b node/index.js. As I said, that issue went away. It gives you another issue. It says exports is not defined in ESMAR. I've banged my head over this a few times. Now you can Google this other error that it gave me and try to figure out another solution that will give you another error. Why? How do I know? I tried it, but let's see. Let's go to the other GitHub repository that someone had created, and they're pretty confident that it works. So let's see. Apps/backend npm run build. TSC node/index.js does not work for me, sir. This specific example that you have posted, OFC Eli Javed, does not work for me. You mentioned it works for you. Can you mention the node version, the version of Node.js that you're using? I am using 21, which is latest enough, but that seems like this. I have learned Rust until generics. Is this enough to get started in a smart contract? If you understand traits and generics, if you understand traits, how you can write traits maybe, but even not write traits, at least understand how to use traits. Yeah, that's all that Anchor is. Anchor is the framework to use when you're using Solana. Can you share a high-level roadmap to learn the Anchor framework? I don't have a video on this too. I know I don't. High-level roadmap is, bro, if you understand Rust, then it's pretty easy. If you understand Rust, if you understand the data model of Solana, then Anchor is just an easy way to write the same code, right? Can you release a video on how to fix things ad hoc for CMS website as it goes down frequently? Yeah, I'll add that. Oh, I had to share that as well, even though we're at time here. But if I get the time at the end, I'll share a little bit. Subtitles to the meetup video. You mean the Mumbai video? Yeah, we have a better audio for that, but they've not uploaded it. Let's see. 30. I'll come to that later. I'll forget about it. Just ping Rookie. He has a better audio video. Type module did not fix it. Someone added something else. Off topic, but can't able to figure out in Prisma how to delete the post of a user. I've done it, but it says arguments not enough. Should we delete with Prisma user ID this thing? Cascading help us provide a method. Off topic, can I able to figure out how to delete the post of a user? How to delete the post of a user? Do you mean delete all the posts of a user? If that's your thing, then where user ID equal to user ID sounds right. But this seems like a very compound query that you've created. If your question is how to delete all the posts of a user, then where user ID UID sounds right. If it is to delete a specific post, then it simply needs to be post ID equal to something, right? So Prisma, why are you doing Prisma.user.delete? You want to delete the posts, right? So we will do a prisma dot posts dot delete, right? Adding Tailwind to Turbo Repo tricky. We have created a basic application. Is this? I've made a small change in that template by moving the source folder so that we can structure looks like this. Okay, docs app slash doc slash source slash page slash styles. Why are you using pages router? Chalo theek hai. Anyways, add TypeScript. Our root package JSON will look like this. So add this to the root of your project. Okay, let's see where this goes. But can you not just add it to the relevant packages? Create these files where in our packages slash config. So you add a new config package where you write tf. This looks good, and it has, okay, got it. The packages UI. This is this right? Does it need to have the actual, unless you're okay, you do. So where did you said this ts config exists in packages slash config. So where in the next application did you tell ke bhai dot slash app slash wherever is where you want to post it? This ts config, how is it aware of apps slash react, basically, you know, everything that's present here? Because it seems like you're putting this in. Oh, you're probably importing this somewhere then. Oh yeah, okay, sorry. That makes sense. You're importing it here. That makes sense. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, that looks right. And let me just, bookmark this so I can just yoink this later on. If I do yoink this, we'll do a bounty for this as well. Let's see. Change lib to ES2022 and tsconfig. I'm pretty sure I've tried that. Let's see. In tsconfig lib, let's go to tsconfig of apps slash backend, and lib to ES2022. Let's try that. Did I revert the module change? I did. Okay. Node is slash index.js. Same error, sir. Same error. I did change this to ES2022. Try below. Fix for me. Hope yours. Why is it? Oh, so yeah. It might work if you use module.exports, but we don't want to. I mean, we can use it, but you don't want to use module.export. You want to use the export const. Syntax. Yeah, this is not the issue. Notion doc, GitHub. Oh, seems like this is a more prevalent issue. Someone was posted a link to a GitHub issue in TypeScript. TypeScript can see objects globally if they are not exported. Don't think this is relevant. Could be wrong. Notion doc doubts. Let's see. Is hydration an ignorable issue? I face this as no, it's not an ignorable issue. You should probably look into why that is happening. It is ignorable if you're able to see the application, but at some point you should figure out what's up. And you the best way to debug these are very hard to debug. The best way to debug these is, but number one, a lot of times these hydration errors come in dev. They don't come in production, so that's fine. In case they are coming in dev very often, and this is not a dev only issue, then the way to debug this is, first comment out this line and then see if it works. Then comment out this line. First comment the whole application and see if, are you seeing the errors? No. Then uncomment some things and then finally try to. This is the most ad hoc way to, fix these kind of issues. Yeah, we'll learn OpenAPI spec and parsing. What does parsing mean? But yeah, OpenAPI spec we'll learn. So probably an offline video now, but we'll see. Type module did not work. Does anyone not have questions? Okay, I'm opening for questions. Show debug. Yes. Check out this thing. Similar to Devin. AutoGen. Yeah, it's been here for a while. AutoGen is pretty old. Cool. Let me open chat. I will discuss the issue from yesterday after this one, but let me answer a few more doubts. Wow, it's a lot. It's from I think everyone wants the $100 bounty. So let's see. Let's start from the top. Try clearing the cache. Did not work, sir. I tried that. See if this is working. This is working with TSC. I just used the scripts inside common/package.json. It did not work for me though. I just showed you. I did run this locally. I was facing an issue. Now seems like this might just be a me issue. One question. Where do I ask? Can you tell me in Q&A? Are you guys also seeing the same error when you run TSC? Did anyone even try to run TSC? Or someone posted an open issue in Vite as well. Now I see I don't have TSC, Second way, if you don't just run yarn dev, you'll see value in the backend. Here is a blog post. We already have a blog post on this. All right, let's see. Yeah, I know, week 15, Wally cheese. Dude, it's fine. You changed the code, but which part did you change? Never mind. Let me just look at the chat from the top again. Okay, so it seems like we're just trying to figure this issue out of TypeScript. So then let me just try to see if there are more questions. Can we create a micro frontend architecture with Turbo Repo? I tried to answer this yesterday. We can create a let me not commit it. We'll see. I have learned. Okay, answered that. Why are the questions repeated? Prisma, I want to update unique data for my many users. Unique data for many users. Yeah, what you can do is you will have to run multiple queries, but don't send them sequentially one by one. Sell them together in a batch. You can send 10 different queries in a batch. Maybe send like 30 in a batch and update. So you have to do a bunch of prisma.user.updates. But don't send them sequentially directly. You can batch queries in Prisma. Batch them and send 30 first, and then 30 first, and then 30 first, and then that's how you might have to update this. You don't have a simple, you can't run a single query and update unique values. If everyone has a unique value that you're updating in bulk, then you need to hit the database like multiple times. But you can avoid hitting it sequentially by sending it in bulk. Now I see. Okay, so no more questions then. I'm opening chat once for any questions related to the class. Seems like there aren't many. No questions. As we want to delete a particular post for a specific user, so we don't want to delete by going into the users and then posts, or tell me how do we delete using prisma.post.delete. You have the ID of the post, right? So prisma.post.delete where post ID equal to something. Abhi मैं शराब ये क्या है? Can't find app folder as top level folder here. Can it be modified as web? I'm assuming. It can be modified as whatever you want. It's all of this is present in the root package.json. So if you go to the root package.json, you'll find all the places where your modules can exist. In this case, we've said apps and packages. In your case, it seems like web is a separate folder that is not part of the packages of the monorepo, which is also fine. A lot of times you don't need multiple packages. Seems like that's what's up here. But yeah, open this. Where did you find this? Usually good idea to just link me to the original thing as well. Do we have to configure the turbo repo? Should it build backend first or frontend? That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It handles the order by itself. Backend and frontend mein, it's not necessary that backend should build first, frontend should build next. Right? It's building. It's converting TypeScript to JavaScript. Nothing is running. So it doesn't matter if the front-end code gets built first, right? You're not running the front-end code. It's not talking to your backend. So you don't need to have such a dependency. The dependency that does exist is, if your one package uses another, then the second package builds first and the first package builds. Why do we need to export, then import? Why not directly import elements exported from the common module? What do you mean? Do you mean do something like this rather than doing this? Why can I not do // packages / this? Your answer is right here. TypeScript will begin to complain, okay, bhai, cannot find this module, you're going outside the root folder. You can still get around this, but general practices ke you namespace modules and use them like you would use another npm package. Yeah. What is base.json? It has a base TypeScript configuration for a simple TypeScript project. Ke haan bhai, the needs to have declarations and whatever else keys I understand here. This is the base configuration that other can extend and overwrite. But all of these might need some parts of these. So you just write the base first, then you can extend the base wherever it's been extended, and then you add more options on top. If you have a Next.js repository, then you probably want to use this, next base and then override whatever you want on top. This also, as you can see, extends the base. So this base basically has the base set of configurations that you need for a TypeScript project. And then whatever you want to override, you can override over here. Javed, I have tried your project. Let's see. This is your project, right? Yeah, I am trying your project only. This is turbo/app/backend. So this is your project. I run tsc-b here. I run node/index.js here. And it says export const value equal to 1 unexpected token exports. It might work if I add a module or export here, which is something someone suggested, but I don't want to add that. Okay. I have tried this as well. No, I haven't tried this. Let's see. Someone said add this to your path. Package.json. Sorry. tsconfig /backend. Let's see if that fixes it. I'm not very hopeful. Yep, same error. Same error, sir. So if you do figure out the fix here, tag me on Discord. Don't tag me on Discord. Let's see. Let's find a cleaner way to do this. I'll ask Rookie to create a Google form. If you find a solution to this, post a Notion doc link there, wherever, or a GitHub link where it works for you. I've been very curious as to why this does not work for a long time. I would love to know if someone knows like the exact answer. I've tried a lot of ad hoc ways to do it. Was not able to figure this out for a long time. So try it out. If you find a solution, where should you put it? I will most probably miss a message on General or someplace else. Yeah, let's do a Google form that you can find in announcements today after the class with the feedback form. Try to post it there. Let me ping Aryan as well. Please add a Google form with the announcement today. All right, cool guys. Thank you. Seems like you guys were like more curious to solve the issue. Let me quickly share what happened yesterday. By the way, I totally forgot that. Yesterday the website was down for a few people. You might have seen it. We haven't found an issue yet. A way to fix it yet. But here is a high level. This is This is the Next.js server of app.100xdevs.com. If you guys remember, I'm hoping all of you have you guys bought the course. You bought it on a different website that is owned by someone else. This is that other website, which is harkirat.classx.co.in. And whenever you sign into app.100xdevs.com, since the user data is stored here, we have to hit them. And they tell us that these credentials are correct. They're effectively, our database, our backend, our database, because the user comes here, signs up here, buys a course here, the information about them buying also exists over here. So their database actually contains all the information around who has bought the course and the user information. So whenever I sign in, or whenever I'm on app.100xdevs.com and I see my purchases, this all information we query Apex for. And we hit like a very ad hoc endpoint that we got from them, which is a /login endpoint and a / purchases endpoint to check whether or not this user has purchased, whether or not this user has the right credentials. These login and purchase endpoints are ideally meant to be hit from harkirat.classx.co.in. You come here and you hit that endpoint. And what they did was they added rate limiting to these endpoints, which means this login endpoint, a single IP cannot hit more than 100 times in a minute. This purchases endpoint, same thing. A single IP cannot hit it more than one minute, like more than 100 times in 1 minute. And this is fine. They did the right thing. They don't want the user to come and spam them, refresh harkirat.classx.co.in. But since our backend is using the same endpoints and, thousands of our users or whatever, hundreds, as many people are hitting app.100xdevs.com, all these requests are going from the backend server's IP. So this backend server got rate limited, which is why, a lot of people were not able to log in. A few people that were able to log in were not able to see any purchases because backend endpoint said, bro, I don't know anything. You are rate limited. So these are the two problems that we're seeing. Number one, a lot of people are not able to log in. Number two, a lot of people are not able to see their purchases. What is the solution I've added? I've added a very big cache over here. So if you look at the latest commit, I've said the endpoint that actually, this function, if you look at, this actually hits Apex and gets back whether or not a user is valid, or their username password is right. As you can see, the argument it takes is username and password. I said, bro, let's do this validation and set it on a cache for 24 hours. And in the future, I get all of this from the cache. So if the cache has the user value, you will just simply return it. If the cache says, okay, bhai, someone with this username and password already exists, then we're like, okay, bhai, we're going to return it from here. We are not going to hit Apex. So we have added a very aggressive cache over here to minimize the number of end hits that we're doing to Apex. That's the workaround for now. What's the long-term solution? We'll have to just pour data from here to here, or they will have to give us an endpoint that is not rate limited, because in our case, our backend is proxying all these requests and our users aren't sending them directly, which is why they're rate limiting our backend, which is something we don't want. For people who are curious, did you guys understand the problem? Two solutions are there. As I said, number one, they give us an endpoint that's not rate limited. Number two, we just caching is one solution. The better solution is we just start to put all of this data in our database. The user information, the purchases information. So we import the data from them. The problem is they don't have passwords. I mean, they have passwords, they're not sharing passwords, which makes sense, right? You don't want to share user passwords with another person. They're private. So since we don't have passwords, it'll be a pain. But yeah, that migration will have to happen at some point. And there's a PR already open of a person trying to do that migration, but it's a hard PR, or it's a hard thing to do. And that person I'm trying to refer now, because that PR pretty much explains, he knows what he's doing. It's a very nice PR on, basically I did not have to guide him at all. He added purchases to our database, he added passwords to our database, so that we start to store user information on our side. We have to do just a one-time migration to move all the users to our database, to move all the purchases to our database. All future purchases we can do from here, but migrations are always tough. So I don't know when it will happen. But based on these ad hoc issues, might have to happen at some point. Cool. Curious question might be, Harkeet, why did they have to add rate limiting? And the answer is they got DDoSed. When your company becomes really big, and Apex is really big now, it's a common attack vector that hackers will DDoS you. DDoS stands for denial service of attack. Something like this happened. I don't know. I'm unsure if it was DDoS or something else. But that was breaking this server, so they added aggressive rate limits. That's a high level. Hopefully that was. बाबर इतने सारे, प्लीज रुक जाओ भाई, देख रहा हूँ. See the latest commit. Solve the issue. Okay, चलो यार, last thing I'll try to look at. Okay, जोक भी पढ़ रहा हूँ भाई. एक सेकंड. जोक में भाई बहुत. शराबी, मुझे शराब छोड़नी है. डॉक्टर, हाँ बिल्कुल, आप अपनी शराब की बोतल हमारे हॉस्पिटल में छोड़ के चले जाइए. हाँ, ये फनी तो नहीं था भाई, पर ठीक है, गुड ट्राई. चलो, solve the issue. See the last commit. Oh, you made some changes. You can just run yarn dev. Okay, yes. Okay, so you added a commit. Let's see. Oh wow, if it's just this, it would be pretty funny. But chalo, let me clone your repository one more time. I will try it one last time right in front of you. देखो यार, तुम्हारे सामने try कर रहा हूँ. I have cloned your repository. I open item. I go to project/analytics. I clone your repository. I go to Turbo. I do an npm install. It's taking a long time. Let me just read chat until then. Oh, where is Zoom? It is open, right? Oh, I'm not sharing, am I? Sorry, guys. There you go. I just cloned your repository. I ran npm install, and I'll run. But yeah, let's see if it works. cd apps/backend npm run build. Maybe you have the script. I see this when I run npm run build. Let me run tsc-b and node this/index.js. Moment of truth did not work for me, sir. Let me try npm install TypeScript, which is seems like the thing that you did. Let me try npm run build one more time. Nope. I'll probably have to I think the difference between your machine and my machine is I have TypeScript installed globally. So let me do npm uninstall tsc-3 npm run build npm run build. What do you have in build? Hands off, dude. Right in front of you. But usually, add a video here that shows that it works. At least would have made me. I'm sure it works on your machine, but we need to figure out, what that difference is and what you're doing right. All right. With that, let's call it, guys. It was a decentish class. Let me know. Or let me know. I know what to do next week. I think next auth and CI/CD, and then we'll go from there. So you guys have a good night.